Jesus, come on. It's not like we've been away for 3 months and then the very, very first opportunity to fuck it up, you've done it, haven't you? For God's sake.
That's not scripted. It's honestly not. She did that accidentally.
I can't stop it though. What's that called? It's something we do.
It's just called you. Anyway,
inhibition, lack of inhibition.
Yes.
Sorry.
Hi there, and welcome to episode 163 of the ADHD Adults podcast. I'm James Brown, the man who avoids exercise pathologically, and I'm joined, as usual, by... I'm not actually going to say professor anymore because it's going to cause your ego to swell to dangerous proportions. It's for your own
Too late.
Dr. Alex Connor, whose psychopathy demands he avoid having any empathy, and Mrs ADHD, who demands I avoid her physically as it makes her vomitous.
I'm actually Mrs AuDHD now, thank you.
You are diagnosed. I mean, everybody knew, but
diagnosis.
Do we have to call you that now?
You can call me whatever you like.
Maybe not in a public forum. Anyway, Alex, hi.
Things backwards.
You demand avoidance. You demand, that's like hello, and then demand avoidance.
Oh, you're the man,
yeah.
Avoidance. Get it.
Thanks.
How are you both, Mrs AuDHD first or something?
Oh, it's weird that, isn't it? I don't know. How are you?
No. And Alex, he says for the first time in a while, but still wearily.
I'm excellent. Thank you, James. Miss you both on the podcast. Speak to you all the time. It's pretty clear that we've still maintained some levels of numbers, I imagine, numbers. For example, the Metrics guy texted us this week, keep it up, but we don't know what it is, and we haven't done it for months. So, hello?
And you can't get it up?
No, that's sadly...
is that pointed at one of us in particular?
No, it's just saying it.
It's a fair guess. One of whom has sent us a letter.
What?
Perfect.
That's right. It's from a... I'm just going to have to check this, actually.
Oh, God. You've not got reduced background noise on your mic.
I put it in front. No, I haven't. That's true. It's from a Robert from Kidderminster. It says, I listened to last week, or possibly several weeks ago, you lazy bastards episode on school education. Says here, did you know that the teachers at James's school described him as a pain in the neck? Not because he's a Dracula, because he's a... I can't read that. You're going to get kicked out of heaven, you potty mouth.
I got excited then.
We've had a real letter from a Brenna or Brianna. It's so hard to know. Can I read it?
No.
Yeah.
Thank you. It says, hey, Sam, James and Alex, I just want to say that I adore you all for different reasons. You all, says, really do make this community feel like a big family. I was thinking about it the other day, and Sam and James have big mum and dad vibes despite no kids. And I mean, you know, don't sugarcoat it. Jesus, Brianna or Brennan. And Alex is like a dorky older serial killer brother I never had. Lol. Well, I do have an older brother, but he's not a serial killer. Amazing. I just wanted to say, y'all, again, have made unpacking my ADHD discovery so much better. I've tried to search you up at least 5 times, but every time I get to Instagram, I get distracted by something shiny and forget that I was trying to find you to send y'all, again, a message. So thank you 3 so much for putting quality content. You putting content out without me. Quality content out that got me through the icky feelings that come with unpacking a lifelong neurodevelopmental disorder. Love from, I don't know this place, but it's Australia something, kangaroo picture. If this happens to get anywhere, feel free to use my name, but don't call me Brianna for the love of God. You're definitely going to call me Brianna for the rest of time now, aren't you? Brenner! On Buy Me a Coffee.
Well done.
Oh, thanks, Brianna.
Yeah,
Thanks, Brenna.
I was going to do metrics, James, but Tarquin, the metrics intern, has left us because we took a break, and he's standing for election in the constituency of Nobbing on the Wold for reform. He lost his deposit. That's unrelated.
Ding.
Yeah, I think
anyway, As usual, this famous jizz-plastered 1980s chimpanzee of a podcast is a tragedy in 3 parts. We choose a theme. Last time around, I think, we're not really sure, was about ADHD and school education. And this week, we're going to be discussing ADHD and demand avoidance. Thanks to Rachel, Sophie, and Pete for discussing the topic. Very good, Al. Remember, you can suggest future topics via the form on the website www.theadhdadults.uk. The 3 parts include the Benny from Crossroads of evidence, Alex the Psycho,
I'll take that.
Education Monkey, talking about the theme. In part 2, we'll give our personal reflections and tips on demand avoidance, and then we'll answer some questions which have been sent in by our listeners in the final section. If anyone's still listening by then, probably not. No. So, Alex, I often demand you avoid me something education.
Well, thank you very much, both. Right, psychoeducation. I don't know how to do it. Demand avoidance is a pattern of behaviour where someone tries to evade or avoid, I don't know the difference, obligations or requests or demands. That's what it sounds like, right? This is seen in various contexts: social life, academic life, professional environments. It's both the avoidance of certain things at certain times, and it refers to the things that we do in order to avoid those requests or demands. And those demands can be either demands for oneself we avoid, James, or demands for other people. It can include going to extreme lengths to avoid complying with all kinds of demands. The joke there is that James doesn't ever do anything nice for himself. He needs to demand things. It is, however, a natural human trait. Avoiding demands is something we all do and should do at some point to different degrees and for different reasons. It's a form of self-care if it's not too disastrous. These demands can be direct, such as, put your trousers back on, James, you're scaring the sheep.
What sheep?
Well, what that is, Sam, is a figurative joke where I was pretending he was nakedly frightening sheep. So the demand is that he stops doing that. He's not, of course. It was a comedic vehicle.
Right. Mm-hmm, well, thank you for explaining it.
And thank you for crashing that comedic vehicle.
You're welcome.
It's quite nice, a bit of thanks. Is that so difficult?
It's nice to be appreciated.
Isn't it? They can also be more indirect demands. They don't have to be the trouser one, such as avoiding having plans or avoiding questions or avoiding making decisions. These are usually, not always, internal demands. Demand avoidance can include loads and loads of strategies to avoid the tasks and expectations of life: procrastination, distraction, negotiation, or even outright refusal. The avoidance of demands isn't due to laziness or disobedience, usually. I mean, there's 100,000 people going, mine is. I know there is, because that's what we do. In many cases, though, it's a coping mechanism for underlying anxiety or stress or sensory processing issues, and actually, or the narrative when ADHD people can't do something, but we pretend we could if we wanted to. We're just being ornery. The reason we're talking about it, the term is very often used in relation to neurodevelopmental conditions, especially autism, but obviously ADHD.
So, so-called Alex, is this the same then as pathological demand avoidance, and is it an autism thing?
One, when you hear PDA, do you think public display of affection or pathological demand avoidance?
I just think PDA.
It used to be the latter, now the former. Is that right?
I used to think it was public display of affection. Right, before we go into this, ding! We need to remind our listeners that we share evidence-based information in this bit. So we are guided by findings from research, and that is tricky. This area is tricky when it comes to research. So pathological demand avoidance, or PDA, it's not kissing in public, is a controversial issue, controversial for us too. Firstly, the name. People have proposed a change from pathological to just extreme demand avoidance to reflect this idea that from an individual's perspective, avoidance of requests might seem to them appropriate and therefore not pathological at all, even if that rejection of demand might be disproportionate from the perspective of somebody else. Whatever you call it, PDA has been associated with autistic spectrum condition or disorder since Professor Elizabeth Newson first described it in the 1980s as a syndrome in a group of 12 children. James, do you need me to speak slow so you understand this? So, Sam, it's literally the first time I've read that bit because James does the research and I read it out and people think that I do it all, as you know, and I really like it. It's so annoying.
12 children doesn't seem many, does it?
No, I mean, that's a fair point. It really is. It's a load of old crap. And these children were described as being complex or atypical or genuinely puzzling in the paper, but not classically autistic or not described as that. It is really important to state that our understanding of autism has grown massively since that paper, and using those terms is not appropriate today. More recently, clinicians and researchers, that was a Freudian slip, massive big baby doctors and researchers, grown-up adult professor ones, have moved towards describing PDA as a profile, which is a group of behaviours can use to describe many autistic people, but not a distinct syndrome or diagnosis.
Okay.
The PDA Society, a UK-based not-for-profit or charity sort of, describes PDA as a profile that is on the autistic spectrum, and the UK's National Autistic Society calls PDA a profile that first requires an autism diagnosis. According to the National Autistic Society, some people have a diagnosis of autism with a demand avoidant profile or a PDA profile noted, and others self-identify with the label PDA, and the term PDA is how many people choose to be referred to.
Okay.
Where's the beef then, mate? Where's the controversy?
If you just wait, James. Jeez. Cheese and rice. You'll find out if you just wait, just a bit of patience. As we said earlier, demand avoidance is not exclusive to ASD. Anybody may express an unwillingness to do anything, to do something instructed or even required, and demand avoidance may be seen in other psychiatric settings in patients who do not have ASD. Some people feel that the whole concept of PDA, pathological demand avoidance, undermines self-advocacy of autistic people, ignores the role of anxiety as a possible underlying cause or contribution. It's really important to note that PDA is not recognised universally across all diagnostic frameworks. It's not a formal diagnosis in the DSM-5 or the ICD-10 or 11, which is the WHO's one, whichever number it is. And its classification within the autistic spectrum is subject to constant debate and research and opinions. An example of this debate is a review of the scientific literature in 2008. I'll read it out to you, James. I'll simplify it and read it to you. In The Lancet, because I also haven't read that one.
2018.
Yeah. Did I say 2008?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a simple number. Alex, come on.
Flawless. This is flawless so far. I can't remember any errors, mistakes, interruptions, deviations, etc. It's like we've not been away, really, isn't it?
Perfect. This Lancet paper that was either in 2008 or 2018 suggested that there is insufficient evidence to support PDA as a subtype of autism or even an independent condition. Very few robust studies exist to support it or actually refute it. It's just not well known. Mm-hmm. Any that do exist are small, and this smallness, feeds the controversy. So pathological demand avoidance as an idea might be conceptually useful, but it might not be a concrete thing.
So what does PDA, EDA, whatever you want to call it, look like in people?
Loads of common features, but it's a boring list, Klaxon, I'm afraid.
Lists.
I love lists. Strong need for control. I mean, ding, I have that.
No, I do.
Yeah. I've got a great big one. There's a ding. A tendency to be oppositional and defiant. Intense fear of and resistance to demands. I mean, leave me alone. Difficulty understanding and following instructions. Social difficulties. Restrictive interests. Sensitivity to senses, so sensory sensitivity.
A lot of that just sounds like autism, though.
And ADHD, right?
Yeah.
So, having just fucking said that and, swept aside the next line in the script.
Oh, yes.
No, it was him. It was him.
Oh, yes.
It was him, Mrs AuDHD. It was balloon head there. What about the thing, Alex?
The thing, James. The thing. The shit named thing. Again, ADHD, not a lot of research. Many of the problematic, not our words, aspects of pathological demand avoidance are also seen in ADHD, as the boring list above clarified. If you look clinically, individuals with PDA have difficulties in emotional regulation, with control, with impulsivity. Pretty sure that sounds familiar. And so the broad traits associated with the PDA can overlap with ours. Also, executive dysfunction, PDA and ADHD, initiating tasks, completing tasks, controlling impulses, all in both of those things. And as we've covered before, ADHD and ASD, or the traits of them, coexist commonly, with around 50 to 70% with ASD either having or saying they have ADHD, reporting it, and as many as 50% of people with ADHD may also be autistic. Certainly, on average, all of us have more autistic traits than the average population. Yeah. Interestingly, depending on what that word means to you, an admittedly small study from 1932, 2020, suggested that in adult populations, the self-reported individual differences in ADHD, emotional instability, and antagonism appear to better predict this idea of pathological demand avoidance than it does autistic spectrum disorder condition. So, in other words, PDA seems to be a profile associated with both autism and ADHD. Might be because there's a link between those two, might be separate, don't know. As we often have to say, more research needed, Klaxon.
Well, I've got to say, I'm already bored with your voice. It's been several months since we've done this, but I'm fucking sick of you. So let's take a break and we'll come back in part 2 for whatever part 2 is. I've forgotten. See you in a bit.
Bye.
No.
Yeah.
Alex, hi.
Aight. What's up? Hello, Governor.
Welcome back to episode 163 of the ADHD Adults podcast. As always, probably can't remember, in part 2, we're doing personal reflections on the theme of demand avoidance, pathological or otherwise, and we're giving our tip tops, our spunk trumpets, our top tipics. Something vague, I guess. Anybody got any reflections on pathological demand avoidance? Knowing you both, I'm fairly certain you have. James, can we start with you?
Well, I mean, this will at least be short and painless. Ding. I obviously haven't got any skin in this game. I'm not autistic, but as somebody with ADHD, when you look at that list of what demand avoidance presents like, I mean, oh my God, that is most of the activities I have to engage with in life. You know, particularly those internal ones, trying to make a decision, you know, trying to have to force yourself to plan something. And I will definitely, I would say at times, find extreme, in my opinion, ways to avoid demands. And this is where language is really important. I fucking hate the name pathological demand avoidance. I loathe it. Why would you add I understand this was developed a while ago, and you know, sometimes names and labels stick, but it really is a terrible name. Extreme demand avoidance, I think, is better. But again, everything's relative, surely. Surely everything's relative. What is extreme to me probably isn't. It's probably very extreme to other people. Sorry. And it's clear. It's clear that demand avoidance at an extreme level is found in neurodivergent people. It could be that it is like some of the non-diagnostic symptoms that you don't see in everybody. So the evidence, for example, for emotional dysregulation is about 70% of adults with ADHD, and it's one of the reasons it's not a diagnostic criteria, although it's mentioned. So it could be that it's part of the presentation. For me, in terms of when I avoid demands, it is almost always based around anxiety. So when you mentioned that in the first part, that it doesn't take into account how anxiety can drive avoiding demands, it's almost always, in my case, anxiety that stops me from engaging with something and actually going to great lengths to not engage with that thing. But whether that is extreme or it's definitely not pathological, whether that's extreme, I don't know, because what am I comparing it to? You know, it's as you've said in the past, Alex, like big T, little t trauma. You know, extreme to one person is different to extreme to another. So I don't know. I think maybe the crossover with oppositional defiant disorder could be interesting in children with ADHD. And again, how do you separate out the different elements of those two profiles? In terms of a tip, God, I mean, visit the PDA websites. There are lots of good resources with better tips than mine doing, because my tip is go to their website. But learn about it. And I think for me, the key thing is that language is powerful. And particularly with children, I would be uncomfortable just using the label pathological to describe the behavior of any child, really. Mrs AuDHD, or whatever you're called now. What about you?
Yeah, it's weird, this one, isn't it? Because I don't know. I mean, I don't generally avoid demands. I love them, actually. I like doing things for people and having
in that
demands.
case, can you fuck off?
No. But I do not like making decisions. That's one demand I do not respond well to. And I would say, like you, if I am anxious, which I am a lot, then I can just hide and avoid everything because of anxiety. But like you were saying, I think, you know, a lot of that is kind of probably emotional instability as well. It depends how I'm feeling emotionally. If I'm emotionally good, I can meet all the demands that are expected of me. I could even make a simple decision sometimes. Yeah. But if not, then and I was thinking that when you were reading it out, oppositional defiancy disorder, sounds the same, isn't it? I don't know. Maybe not.
It's only in children, isn't it? That it's very similar.
Oh, I didn't know
as
that.
As a diagnosis.
Yes, a diagnosis.
Obviously, we often have oppositional traits as adults.
Yeah, but a lot of that, like I said, just sounds like when you were saying a strong need for control, difficulty understanding and following instructions, social difficulties, restrictive interest, sensitivity. That'll do. All of those, but that's just my autism, I think, and ADHD as well. And I don't have any tips because I don't really understand what we're talking about. Alex, go.
Fair enough.
Oh, you were going to say something, James.
Oh, no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I like this. Stream of conscious. You're right. This is a difficult one. Right. I have this a lot. James knows full well that one of the... I say no, don't I, to everything you suggest. Everything anyone suggests.
Oh, my God, so do I.
Fucking hell.
Oh, my God. In fact, before I
would
knew
you say
I was
it's pathological?
Before I knew I was neurodivergent, I spoke to my line manager and said, I've noticed that no matter what anybody suggests, even if it's positive, I will say no to it. So if you've got something new to suggest to me, just leave it with me a while. And once I've got used to it, I might come round to it. I didn't realise what we were talking about. I'm sorry.
It's like Finding Dory.
I have been compared to Dory a lot. And I'm going to take that as a compliment.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, they had a traumatic head injury, and that's a known cause of ADHD.
Dory had a head injury?
Yeah, because they did it as a joke, didn't they? But then they realised afterwards that fish don't have poor memories. That's a myth. And they realised that they didn't want to make fun of people with poor memories, so they changed it to that. This
just made fun of people with brain injuries. Yeah,
but they weren't making fun, were they? It was a character who's had a brain injury. That's just recognition.
Oh, okay.
Welcome to Analyzing Pixar, the new podcast by three complete dickheads.
I would. Pixar characters who've got ADHD, donkey, that kind of thing. I would really like that. I think we have to be so careful. If you think you say no to things, but you're doing it for self-care reasons, because you do have some level of self-control, because it really hurts you, because you've spent your life saying yes to things, and now you're learning how not to avoid that embarrassment. I'm not sure that that's what the PDA Society would say it's much more extreme, and I don't know if I would tick into that behavior. My wife would say I definitely do. I think the question, if you're here for ADHD reasons, is how much does this affect your values? So are you doing it and it isn't the person you want to be and you think you are, so it's affecting your day? That's kind of how I think about this. I'm saying no to things that James, because he knows me so well and we trust each other, he says, yeah, we're fucking doing it anyway. And they're usually the best things I've ever done.
Ding.
He also, Yeah. He also suggested this podcast, so it's not always true. Or I did, James. One of us did.
Get fucked. You know I did.
So I find the feeling of being asked to do something physically painful. I don't find the doing of that thing painful at all. Ding, I guess. And so it's an emotional reaction. And that leads to the top tip, which is I say, if it's now, it's no. But it might be yes later if you let me go away, because I know what I'm like. And I know that I just have this broken, it's a neurological fight or flight response to any broken pattern. And my pattern was not to be asked a question, and therefore you've broken it and you didn't mean to. It might be something simple I can do. I just need time to think about that. And it needs to be a real fucking question as well. If someone asks you a question and you say no and they don't have to take that for an answer, it wasn't a question in the first place. Up yours. Has to be a question.
Can I ask you, Alex, so-called Alex, about your internal demands? So the external ones, I can get that it's more obvious that people can see. For example, a child with autism who may be going to extreme lengths to avoid engaging in an activity. But what really interests me is the internal ones, decision making particularly, because I think many of us have decision paralysis, but that's different to doing anything you can to avoid making a decision, say in a relationship or say about a job, for example.
Yeah, I have a series of algorithms about whether it's good for me or not, like actual logical things. Funnily enough, I was talking to Sam about something along these lines earlier today, that I have to write down what my fucking values are, and I'm rubbish at remembering anything like that. So I go, oh, will that help the podcast succeed? Will that help the course I'm writing with you? And will I do? And I have to have it written down, because I'll just do whatever I like a reactive little jellyfish, just whatever's shiny in front of me all the time. And I, as you know, I'm risk avoidant as well. So I just say no to anything. Take the path of least resistance. I'm not consistent. I feel like I always let people down. So yeah, it's massive, James. I have an external list written down of things I know that I want to do and want to achieve. So otherwise,
is one of those things to play the game, which you haven't played for a while?
No, I've checked before the intern left. He wrote a note to say that the game, the something game not happening.
No. I think the score's 13-7 for this series. I mean, technically this is still series. Technically this is still series 2, although we've just taken a couple of weeks off, obviously.
Yeah,
so anyway, Alex, the game is about preparation. You know the little talks. No, I do.
These little talks he does.
Yeah, the little talks.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't have the right equipment for one of them. Ding.
Ding. Ding, ding.
Massive ding.
But what was the reason I didn't have the right equipment? Was it, one, I forgot to pack the adapter because I took my Mac, and Macs famously, nobody knows this. When I go to talks, a lot of the venues get really fucking annoyed when I bring a Mac. So I didn't pack the adapter so it couldn't connect to something. So I forgot to pack the adapter. 2, did I take the wrong bag with me to the talk?
God.
Just a big bag full of dildos.
And 3, did I have the adapter all along and I didn't see it in the bag?
Oh,
well, I was there and I don't know this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but
Do I?
I don't think you forgot to pack the adapter in the first place, because you have a separate bag that you can hold in your little claws for when you turn into a bat and fly around. And everything's just in there. I think that.
Oh, I wish you did have a bat bag.
Yeah, I wish you turned into a little bat. Yeah, it'd be cool.
Yeah, it'd be amazing. I love bats.
I think you didn't take your bag of dildos because you would never forget that bag, so you'd know you needed to.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I think it's the third one. I think
you're wrong.
Definitely had it.
No, you're wrong. You've restarted off in similar vein. No, I bought a new laptop bag specifically to take to talks, which was bigger. Put all the stuff I needed for talks in that bag, and then just picked up the other laptop bag and chucked the laptop in there. So it didn't have any of the chargers or adapters.
Absolutely relatable.
Amazing, isn't it?
I would have had to put my car keys in the bag I was taking.
Do you know, we've done that before and still manage. When we used to run a homeless charity, I said, right, I've got what we'll do. We'll put the car keys in the bag of sandwiches. We just took them out. No, we just took the car keys out, loaded everything into the car and thought, obviously, we'll remember the sandwiches.
You're not going to forget
almost
that,
every week, we forgot the food and one of us had to go back. Anyway. I digress.
Yeah, well,
I never say that.
On that amazing note, I'm actually glad for once to be a part of this podcast. It's another victory pour moi. We'll take a break and we'll come back in part 3 to answer some questions what you sent in. See you in a bit.
Au revoir.
Bye.
No.
Yeah. Welcome back to episode 162 of the ADHD Adults podcast, where we are talking about ADHD and demand avoidance. In this part, we'll be answering your questions, and I've got a question first, not me, Jen Dawes. God, fuck that up.
Well, at least you got the number right. That's the main thing.
I did. Did I not get the number right?
That was a mistake in the script. I will hold my hand up and say I didn't change the number.
Hold my hand up, so ding.
Is it?
I put my hand
Depends
up.
where you hold it up.
Oh, right, okay.
Anyway, Jen's waiting to come on.
Yeah, sorry, Jen. Jen's just had a reflection back that her ADHD son's... I've got to stop reading it like that because I won't be able to do it all the way through.
It was really confusing.
I know, it was confusing me too. My brain was going, what are you going to do next?
You've changed the grammar format, Sam.
I've just had a reflection back that my ADHD son's demand avoidance come from me. I'm ADHD, waiting to be diagnosed, and work with secondary school autistic, ADHD and comorbs to help their relational safety, emotional regulation and anxiety, among other things. So I know about their shit. But it's a radical idea that I'm DA to me, demand avoidance. I'm terrible for task initiation, especially chores or emotionless tasks. Yes. Always left everything till crisis point. Yeah. Can't even do things I want to because I can't remember the good feelings I'll get. Now I'm really curious to know if demand avoidance might actually have a bigger role in my paralysis towards the things I want to have done. Sorry, just loads of things were occurring in my mind then. That just sounds like ADHD to me, though.
Really, really does.
Yeah, all of that. I was like, yes, all of that. Sorry. What do you think? James, go.
Go.
I mean, everything. I suppose everything that we said. Well, not everything, because a lot of it was shit. About 30% of what we said so far in this podcast, as an answer, clearly, demand avoidance is part of being neurodivergent. Whether it is extreme or pathological, if you want to use that word, because you're a wanker, demand avoidance, then
this is literally a society.
It's difficult. It's difficult to say. I think. Particularly when you look at hereditary neurodivergence and you see traits, particularly in a child as a parent, I imagine don't have one, and then reflect on whether or not those traits have come from you, either biologically or in terms of how you brought somebody up. It's. I mean, I suppose it's almost. I can't think of the word. What's the word? When something is always going to happen.
Inevitable.
My brain's gone. Inevitable. It's almost inevitable that you will question these things at some point. I think, from a completely non-expert opinion, that demand avoidance exists in most people who are neurodivergent, particularly people with ADHD. And I think this idea of extreme or pathological demand avoidance could be something different. And that's just why it needs loads more research. It really needs to be either shown up for, like you say, a part of the presentation of people with autism or ADHD, or kind of almost prove that it's a separate thing.
Yeah,
I think that's right. And I would say that it depends who that reflection's from. If it's a professional that's done an analysis of Jen and then they're right, and this paragraph isn't enough to demonstrate that, and there's more information.
Yeah, and actually I was reflecting on the way that I read it out, and I don't think I read it out well at all. So I don't know if Jen is reflecting that she thinks it might have come from her, or whether because she's waiting to be diagnosed, and I'm wondering if she's thinking that maybe did it come from her. but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that's
up.
read it out. I think it's ambiguous in the letter. Oh, no, I don't, Jen, not really. But it depends. If you think that the things you're saying are ADHD things as well, so I wouldn't say that. I have those, all the things you've said, Jen, all of them. I think you two do as well, a lot of them, right?
Yes, definitely.
I should just quickly point out, because now the abuse I get is actually translated to hate mail as well as comments on, or hate email as well as comments on social media. That I obviously don't think you're a wanker if you use the phrase pathological demand avoidance.
It's a joke.
I'm being flippant, but I guarantee that somebody somewhere will either send a message saying something about me being evil.
I sent you a joke earlier, didn't I? And I wanted to do it on, and we just couldn't be bothered because people would think I was seriously upset, and I never am. And one of the reasons I mentioned that about the science research that you did earlier in the script is because people do need to know that you are a professor of this shit as well. And I think we have to look out for each other's hearts a bit, don't we? That's one of the things I was thinking while we were away.
You have a heart?
I've got more than one. They're all they're in jars here in the.
That was good. I like that.
Thank you very much. Can I read another letter out?
Yes.
Please do.
It's from. I will. It's from Sim. Safa girl. Girl.
Oh.
It says, just listening to you lovely folks over on Spotify. The ADHD Adults do the ADHD Adults. Ding, episode 4. It doesn't say ding though. It's a picture of a bell from Sim, which I think is a worthwhile effort. The conversation about ODD and ADHD made me wonder, what's the difference between ODD and PDA? Pathological demand avoidance. Is there much of a difference? Is PDA just ODD for autistics?
I like
i.e.
that.
Same product, different branding. Oh, Sim, like your style. Alex mentioned that it's not clear whether ODD is part of ADHD or a separate issue. I believe that PDA is similarly commonly thought of as a profile of autism, but that is in dispute, with some research indicating PDA as a separate issue. Why don't we just get Sim to do our first?
I know, I was just thinking that.
Is this just another layer of the blurred boundaries that seems to be becoming more and more apparent when looking at characteristics of ADHD and autism? Apologies, that question is much longer than I intended it to be. Doesn't say ding, but it should. James.
No, that's perfect. I wish we'd got you on instead of Alex.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. The bit of it which I think is my favorite bit is the blurred boundaries, and that I think just describes it perfectly. If you start to try separating out and siloing different behavioral presentations of a neurodivergence, then I don't understand the aim or the goal in doing
Friday,
that.
as I call it. Just a hobby.
Yes. Anyway, yeah, that it comes down to that whole thing that ADHD isn't one thing. If you like, it's an umbrella term for a branch on, the tree of the extreme end of a behavioral continuum, and to think that we should start subdividing things down into separate entities as part of a kind of condition or disorder, I don't see it as being helpful, but that's just my opinion. Anybody else got out?
I just want to know if Sam is like me thinking about umbrellas on trees, because I got really...
No, I wasn't. I was thinking, so a tree at the end of a continuum, how would that work? No, I think he was talking about the branch, and maybe the branch would be the continuum, and you'd have something at one end of something.
No. I mean, we're really getting... This is obviously fucking great listening.
I didn't hear umbrella.
I just don't think it's this behavioural continuum is not a line, and we're at one end. I think it branches like a big tree.
I thought it was a good analogy. My brain just starts thinking about umbrellas and trees.
And I love trees. Yeah.
Anyway, as I said, anybody got out about that letter other than what you've said?
I liked it.
Yeah, I really liked it.
Fab. That was lovely. Thank you so much, Sim. Safa girl. Let's move on to the last letter from Anonymous, not the group of hackers. Hi guys, I really love the podcast, and watching Mrs ADHD/AuDHD, doesn't say that, in ADHD Towers is so validating. Knowing that there's someone out there like me makes me feel less weird.
Probably worse.
James, you're definitely not a dick. When others say you are, it makes me angry on your behalf. Morons. Fucking love this. And Alex, you make me snort laugh so much. I love your bad jokes. I left that my instead of me in there for you, and I corrected it.
Nice.
Fuck that up. After 14 years of being told I had treatment-resistant depression and anxiety, I finally went private and received my diagnosis for ADHD. The medication has completely taken away the depression and most of the anxiety. Hooray!
Yeah.
However, since being treated for ADHD, there are difficulties I have that I never appreciated before, and I'm not sure if they are the ADHD or if I also have autism. I'm outwardly successful, but people don't appreciate that it requires an obsession with work that leaves room for little else. I struggle with sensory issues. I only notice this since being on the medication. I seem to hear or smell the most subtle things, like, as Sam, the senses of a wolf, as I say to her, and it drives me crazy. And if someone messes up my super organized home, let's just say I've got a lot of anger built up. I also don't feel comfortable around most people, even friends and family. My question: how do you know if you have both autism and ADHD? I don't necessarily want to go down the route of a formal assessment because I don't think it's worth the admin, but I would feel a bit better for not wanting to be around anyone, and I think it would help me accept myself a bit more. Is there a screening tool? Are there key symptoms? I'm going to open the floor. Guys, who wants to go first?
I really identify with so much of that. It could have been written by me. Yeah, and I went through similar things where I was like, well, you know, I've got lots of symptoms. Does it even matter? Do I even need a diagnosis? And all of that. I would say that my autistic symptoms probably got worse when I started medication for ADHD. I think that's because it reduced my ADHD symptoms, which allowed my autistic symptoms to come out. But I was saying actually to Rosie recently, I think more for me, burnout is what has made my autistic symptoms much more prevalent. So when I'm really burnt out, I feel like my brain almost lets me be more autistic, because a lot of the things that I do for myself, like stimming, a lot of things that I do to soothe myself are autistic traits. And I think that's what makes me notice it more. And I think it's because I'm in burnout, and I don't know whether it's similar for them. So I thought I would say it. There are tests that you can do online. And that's what I did in the end when I came to you two guys and said, I think I might be autistic. And you were both like, well, yeah. And I did the AQ.
No.
Yeah. And
no.
I went.
No. Never. Get out.
I went through all of that, and I did the AQ 50, and I scored 43 out of 50 and thought, okay, this is
Did you not fill 7 of the questions in?
I don't have all of the symptoms. But yeah, that for me was a pretty good indicator. And even then, actually, I still didn't think I needed a diagnosis. And I only went for a diagnosis because so many of you wrote in and said it might be useful for us if you had one. So I did it. I didn't realize how much it would help me. It's helped me so much. I mean, I could go on for so long about this. It was a wonderful process, actually, really, really validating and really emotional, but it's helped me to accept myself so much more. And I was talking about this recently with somebody, and I think all my life we think of conditions as things that we need to cure. So we take medication and we cure them. And I thought of ADHD like that. There's medication for it. So, and James kept saying, you know, you're not going to be cured, but I literally thought that I would be. I thought it was going to cure me. When I realized I was autistic, I thought, well, what am I going to do about that? Because there's nothing I can do for it. And that's what made me accept myself. That's what made me finally think, this is the way I am, and I can't change this. So I've just got to work with it. And I don't love myself. I never will, but I go so much easier on myself now. And there are things about myself that I appreciate. Yeah. Because of I love my autistic joy. It's a wonderful thing. What did I say?
We both did a really inappropriate thing when you were saying something meaningful. But we both were spin it at the same time.
Yeah, so it really helped me. And it won't surprise you to know that I did a whole spreadsheet and mapped my symptoms against all of the different criteria for different pre-diagnostic and diagnostic tests. I'm autistic,
actually,
obviously I did.
That turns out
I have a few spreadsheets here if you'd like to see them.
Incredible.
Yeah, color-coded and everything. So yeah, you might just have autistic traits. You might be autistic. It doesn't really matter, apart from if it makes you accept yourself more, that might be a good thing. And you don't need to go for diagnosis for that. You can just find out more about autism. James, go.
No, I was about to say before Alex gives his comments, that was a question I was going to ask you. Before you got your diagnosis, kind of self-accepting, did that help?
Yeah, I struggled actually. I struggled before my ADHD diagnosis because I didn't want to have ADHD. I struggled before my autistic diagnosis because I didn't want to be autistic. And now I've fully accepted it, and it takes time, doesn't it? I've forgotten the question, sorry.
That's fine. Alex, go.
I think being screamed go at is really conducive to good trial.
Good, I'll carry on then.
Somebody that's close to me, who knows who he is, and he's very closely related to me, won't wear the merch from the podcast, even though he loves it, because he hasn't got a formal diagnosis. And it's little things like that, I think, that show us what we think.
Yeah.
And that's really difficult. I think that was what you said, Sam, was it's so much better than anything I could say, because it's how it really feels, and that's
good.
what I'm hearing
that was
from
episode 163 of the ADHD Adults.
Really? We've been away 2 months and you do really? The AQ50 strictly. Go. The AQ50 strictly, and this is bullshit, strictly is one that you're supposed to do with the medical professional. But what everyone says is that it's not that hard to do thing. And you're not allowed.
Some of the questions are confusing because they ask you it in different ways. And you're like, what does that mean? Like they use like double negatives and stuff. And you're like, I can't work out what that question means because I've got difficulties anyway with communication. So I can understand why you might want somebody else with you.
Right. That's good. And are they being ambiguous on purpose because they know that some people struggle with it?
I don't know them.
Fair point. Yeah, you haven't asked. I would literally have to ask them. I phrased an ambiguous question, didn't I? More fool me. Go. Right. And the meds, there's a lot of evidence that the meds reveal autistic traits. Be careful, because we have more on average than the ordinary Joe.
Yeah.
And some of us, like me, have autistic traits, but don't reach autism at all. I really don't. And my meds allow me to, for example, enjoy my own company more because I'm less anxious, not because it's an autistic trait to enjoy your own company. There's lots of extroverted autists. There's lots of autistic people. Autists, what's the right terminology?
Yeah, autistics or autistic people, whatever people want to call themselves.
Yeah, I want to get it right, but I've looked on the website and it's very mixed.
You can't, because everybody calls themselves something different.
As I found out during
my terminology, can you complain to James because he told
if
me
you can?
What to say?
Yeah, if you can, like the people during Neurodiversity Celebration Week thought they'd rip into me because I didn't describe something exactly the way that they saw it, and then other people would say, "Thanks for describing it that way. That's exactly the way it should be described."
Oh, yeah.
It's just joyous fucking week.
Aren't they?
Yeah, or it's a disorder or a difference or something.
Yeah.
That's a really good point, though, Alex, about giving yourself permission, because I think that we notice a lot more because we start unmasking and we start giving ourselves permission to not do the things that we felt under pressure to do before.
I don't think, for example, James or I actually have autistic traits revealed by the meds too much, and certainly not ones at the level that a lot of people report. Lots of people I know who are autistic have exacerbated. But have you noticed that, James?
In myself?
Yeah.
No, I don't think I have. I mean, I did the AQ50 ages ago. I think I scored 23 or 27. I don't recognise many traits of autism in myself. Are we done? Are we?
I think so, yeah.
Well, that was episode 163, hot on the heels of episode 162 of the ADHD podcast, where we talked about ADHD and demand avoidance. If by a miracle you enjoyed this, blah, 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 leave a review, hopefully not about me undermining Alex's perfect and pure heart. You can find more content by subscribing on Patreon and visit the website, theadhdadults.uk. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye all.
Trigger warning klaxon, 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 big klaxon. Trigger warning klaxon, 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 klaxon.
Well, I decided that I'd finally book a venue for James to do a talk here. And last night I could not stop doing it. And it was like, ding. And like, it was 8 p.m. and James was saying, can you stop working now? Can you stop working? I was like, just 1 minute. I just want to do this thing. It's going to be amazing. And posted it, and then posted it on Patreon and said to our Patreon subscribers, here's the link to our talk and here's a discount code. Not only had I obviously, because it's me, done the event for the wrong date, but I'd also incorrectly put the discount code in so that they couldn't get a discount either. So they were buying tickets for the wrong date without a discount, and I fucked everything up. And yes, and I hate myself. I put it all right today, but it was late. And I stayed up and, well, I didn't stay up, but I could have been with James doing things, but instead I was just doing this stupid thing wrong.